On this episode of This is Game Boy, let's get dangerous. But not like too dangerous because we might get hurt and that's never a good idea.
Welcome everyone to episode 13 of Darkwing Duck. I am Belthic Gaming, and with me as always I have Moelle.
Good after whatever.
Morning, it's 9:15 a.m.
Yeah, for me it's afternoon, but for whoever's listening, it might be some other time.
So yeah, before we dive into this game, it's our 1 year anniversary of This is Game Boy.
Yeah, I think so, because I'm not exactly sure. This episode will come out for us in 3 weeks, which would mean the day of Tiny 10.9, which is the 25th of May. And as far as I could see, our very first episode got released the first week of June. But yeah, we do one of these each month. A full episode at least, and this is episode 13, so that would mean, technically, at least, that this would be our 1 year anniversary.
Yeah, imagine we've been doing this for a year.
Yeah, crazy.
That's two idiots talking on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And people listening to it.
People listen to
Yeah.
it. The things you could do on the internet nowadays. So, what have you been up to?
Well, I haven't been doing much lately when it comes to gaming, because I was gone for a week, basically, so I didn't really play much. But I did pick up Moonlighter for Switch, which is a shop-owning simulator / roguelite dungeon crawling game. It's a pretty interesting premise, but I played through basically half the game, because it actually does have an ending. It's not like... you can keep playing it if you want to, but it does have like an actual ending to it. And I made it to like the second boss, which is like the halfway point, I suppose. There's probably like a penultimate boss after the 4 quote-unquote... dungeons that there are in this game. I enjoy it for a bit, but it does get very boring, for me at least. Opening the shop is pretty cool, but you're not really doing much. Like, you just find out what the prices are, you put those things in your shop, you have to refill the shelves, sort of speak, and then people come and buy it, and then you can buy better armor to get through the dungeons better, and things like that. Weirdly enough, it actually does get hard for the wrong reasons. I'm very much struggling to get through the second dungeon in that game, even though I have the best armor I can have up until this point, because you need enemy drops from the third dungeon to get better armor and so forth. So I'm kind of stuck on a wall that I just get hurt too much and I can't just make it to the end. And I kind of put it on the back shelf now. I don't want to continue it at this point. So so that game is over for me for now. But I might get back to it, because it's one of those games like Binding of Isaac or Enter the Gungeon, where you just get in the flow of things and then you play it for a while and then you put it back down again. So it's not going anywhere. So I didn't uninstall it or anything. I just do not want to play it right now. When I got back from my quote-unquote vacation, I did do 1 day of portable pleasure streaming, so that's my Game Boy System challenge. And I did 4 games. 2 of them you suggested I play, which is NBA All-Stars.
All-Star Challenge?
Yeah,
man.
1 and 2.
All those games are so good.
Well, they're games for sure. You can definitely play them. There's not much to it. It's one-on-one basketball with the NBA All-Stars. I only know 3 people who are in that game. The rest of those people I've never heard of in my life, because I'm definitely not interested in basketball or anything. it's not much of a game. Like, you can dribble and you can score, and that's actually pretty much all.
I mean,
there is.
that's basketball in a nutshell.
Yeah,
right
yeah,
there,
pretty
so.
much. So, but it's not a bad game or anything, but it doesn't offer much. And 1 and 2 are literally the same game, but with other different graphics. I think it even has the entire same people in them. Maybe one
Nope,
or
slightly different.
slightly different. Yeah, okay. I think they do have stats though. Like a lot of them are like better at shooting 3-pointers than just dunking it in the basket. So there might be some difference between players, but it's hardly noticeable. I play tournament mode, which is you basically have to play all the matches yourself, and every time one of the other players loses, he gets thrown out of the bracket, and then you have to play in the next bracket with the other guy. It's kind of weird. It doesn't really have any purpose. I think it would be more fun if you played it with more people, but I'm not even sure if there's a 2-player mode in this game. So, I moved on from that onto Worms for Game Boy.
Ugh.
I'm not sure why this game exists.
It's awful.
Yeah, it's definitely not a good iteration of the Worms series. Definitely not. But the weirdest part about it is that it's actually not a single-player game at all. There's like no missions like in the original game or anything, because there's no AI. You control everything in that game. So it's more of a game you have to play with 2 people, passing...
No, there's an AI.
For me, there wasn't. I had to control everything.
For me, there was. Like, you picked, like, tournament mode, and it's like, there's an AI.
That is very weird, because I chose all game modes, and every time I had to do everything.
Yeah, no, I played it. The AI cheated like hell, so...
Maybe I should go back to that game then and check it out again, because...
Fine.
Yeah, it's not fun at all. Like, it's just play a match, and whoever wins, so there's not much more to it. Just play the PC version of that game, even though it hasn't aged that well. At least not the first one. I think the second one still holds up pretty well. Or Armageddon even.
I liked Armageddon a lot.
But yeah, the Game Boy version, just stay the hell away from it, because... Yeah, I mean, it works. I mean, it has everything a Worms game has.
You keep it in Europe. We don't want it over here.
Yeah, no, it's a very strange one. And the last one I played was called Collection Pocket, which I checked out because, as you all know by now, we're like setting up like a database of all Game Boy games and things like that. And Collection Pocket was one of the games that I had on my list that I thought was a collection of other games released on Game Boy, like Konami Collection or the Namco Bandai collections. But this one actually is just a series of 10 mini games, basically. But half of them are pretty much the same game. Like, there's 2 racing, like Tiger handheld racing games where you just dodge left and right. But they're both the same. One you're on a bike and one you're on in a car. So I don't know what the difference is between those. The other, there's, I think, 2 shoot 'em ups, which are not the same, but they kind of are similar. Like, whatever. Then there's a poker game. There's a blackjack game. Like the usual Japanese bullshit games that I call them. Like, there's so many of them. Then there's like a slots game, and then there's a slots game which also is kind of a shooter game. Just watch my video of it, because I can't really explain how that one works. You have to shoot something to stop the wheel from spinning, and you have to make 3 in a row, I guess, and then you hurt the little guy. It's very weird. And then the most interesting thing on it, it just has a random number picker for bingo. So what I did was, I had no idea what was going on. So I was just, what is this thing doing? And just to make sure that nothing would happen after a while, we just sat through, on my stream, we just sat through the entire thing of it picking all 76 numbers of bingo until the end. And that's just it. It doesn't do anything else than that. But it was pretty funny.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was great. Like, all of it's in the video, so you can enjoy that as well. But yeah, I was just sitting here. And the thing is, I couldn't even just let it run because I had to press A after every number it picked. So yeah, it was a thing. But yeah, that's all I played for Game Boy at least. Now I've been playing Resident Evil 4 HD on PlayStation 4. It still holds up well as a great Resident Evil game, but for me, I enjoyed the games before it a little bit better because this one is a little bit too actiony, I guess. I think they did it really well in the remake of Resident Evil 2, where it's still survival horror, where this one is more of like, shoot everything that you see. Not as bad as Resident Evil 5, of course, but yeah, it's a great game, but for me, it's definitely not the best Resident Evil game, but it's up there for sure. Like, we're not gonna talk about 6 or whatever, which everybody hates.
Raccoon City.
Or that, yeah, the first-person shooter. Like, those are not great games, but they're still enjoyable at some level. But yeah, Resident Evil 4, great game. Happy to be playing it again, because it's been since the release of the original that I have played it. So, and then the last one, I finally got Dragon Marked for that. The physical edition that came out in Europe, which has all the DLC, and yeah, I don't know what else it has, like some free items you can use.
It's like the season pass, yeah.
Yeah, so it has everything. It's the full edition. So I've been playing that a little bit just to get familiar with how it works, because we are gonna play this tonight in co-op mode. And I'm probably going to be really, really bad at it because I'm not good at co-op games or even, like, how would you call this, quote-unquote MMORPG
it's
kind of.
It's like Monster Hunter. It's like a 2D Monster Hunter.
Yeah, something like that. So it's a fun game, but I'm really not good at it. And it's really hard as well. Like, it's not a joke game. You do have to know what you're doing.
There are tough parts.
Yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much all I've been playing. Besides that, I've been watching TV mostly. I watched a few movies, like the Resident Evil animated movies. I finally finished Californication after all this time. I had 2 seasons to still get through. I saw Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which is probably the best Spider-Man movie ever made. Also one of the most funny movies I've seen in, like, over 10 years. I loved it so much that I bought it on Blu-ray, which is something that never happens. I never buy movies, at least, on Blu-ray. But yeah, that's pretty much all I've been doing. What have you been up to?
I played all 3 Assassin's Creed Chronicle games. Those were something else. So the Chronicle games, I believe, came out for PSP originally. And they made just a collection of them for Xbox, PlayStation. Yeah, they'll probably come out on Switch. Everything comes out on Switch now.
Didn't they come out for mobile?
Well, there is a mobile game, yeah. That's very, very, very similar to this, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Fun game, very different than your typical Assassin's Creed game, for sure. Like, it's not the third person run and jump over rooftops and all that other happiness. It's a pretty comic style art. It's a comic art style. And it's a 2.5D platformer, essentially. It's pretty interesting. China was the best one. Russia was the worst one. Russia was the hardest one as well, too. But they weren't bad. You could get the collection for like $20, I think. It's well worth playing through. They're not bad games. They're only like 4 or 5 hours long. Besides that, I did some Game Boy Adventure for Game Boy's 30th birthday. I played Who Framed Roger Rabbit. That game is a game. It's not that bad. It's just one of those where the hell do I go games. Mm-hmm. But it's not bad. I'd rather play that than the NES version for sure.
Definitely.
I did NBA All-Star Challenge 1 and 2. The fun part about NBA All-Star Challenge 2 is that on the cover it says, with better graphics, and then the only graphics that change between the two is the backboard. So definitely had better graphics.
Yeah.
But the player sprites were the same. Pretty much everything was the same. Different. They had a different lineup of All-Stars. Yeah, they had stats, but it really did not matter at all. So, what else did I play? I checked out NBA Live 96, and oh boy, is that a game.
I can imagine something, yeah.
It's equivalent to Atari 2600. It's great. Yeah, can't wait to play that. Outside of that, Dragon Marked for Death. I've been playing Dragon Marked for Death for a week now. I've owned the game for like a month, but I've been playing it for the past week because I've been waiting for Mo. And I got tired of waiting. So I hit like level 20 already in the game. Fun game, challenging, but very fun. It's very much like a 2D Monster Hunter where you kill enemies, you get like their loot, and after a while you can exchange that loot for weapons and whatnot. But I played a lot of it solo, and then I played a lot of it co-op as well with Mr. True Shade, who him and I have been in the Kirby community since I started speedrunning. And then setting up Virtual Boy, that's been an adventure in itself. Let me tell you what. So I'm rebooting my Virtual Boy console challenge. System challenge. It's not a console. Let's just be fair. Rebooting my Virtual Boy system challenge. So I finally found it, and I want to do it all on original hardware. So I finally found a Virtual Boy, and I had to fix it. I had to throw the ribbons in the oven to melt the glue. I had to do a lot of repairs to it, but I did get it up and running. And it took me forever to figure out how to capture video. Like, I knew you could stick a camera on the lens, but FearTech made a virtual tap mod where you can push it out to RGB, VGA, and I think one other thing, HDMI, maybe. And however, they don't make that mod anymore, so I had to resort to other measures, and I found a camcorder, pretty old camcorder with an HDMI output, and I just took a tripod from somewhere and got it all set up. So hopefully, and then last night on stream I made the layout for the challenge. So hopefully within the next couple months we'll be starting that back up and getting that rolling. So I can't wait to play Virtual Boy on actual Virtual Boy. But yeah, outside of that, I have some TV. I've been watching a lot of GTA RP on Twitch because I think it's hilarious. I finished the Trailer Park Boys cartoons season, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
It's weird. It's real weird.
I've never seen that show, so I have
oh
no
really?
idea
Oh man, you'd like it. It's really dumb. You'd like it. Yeah. Outside of that, that's about all I've been doing. Trying to help out with some of the database stuff whenever they need my help with it, basically. But it seems like Legs and Mo have it on lockdown pretty much at this point. So I'm just waiting to start the programming bits of that.
Yeah, I think our part is mostly done at this point for that database. All that's left is scanning my cards and taking pictures of the boards, which is gonna take quite a while still because I'm still only have done like 30 of them out of 350. So yeah, that's gonna take a while. But yeah, basically Lex has found all the information she can up to this point and is now ingesting it into the database, I guess it's called, and setting up like a form submission website thingy so that other people can like help out with the information that's missing. So yeah, the next step is gonna be like actually making the new GB Runners website, I guess. So I'm like not doing that much anymore at this point either. So I always ask, can I help with something? But there's not that much I can like really do. So.
Oh. So yeah. Mo, this was your choice. What is this episode about today?
Yeah, this episode is about one of probably the best Game Boy games there is. Definitely one of the best Capcom Game Boy games there is. Called Darkwing Duck.
Oh, so not Little Mermaid.
So definitely not Little Mermaid.
Oh man, Darkwing Duck. Wow. I honestly would have never thought we would do Darkwing Duck at least this early in the podcast.
No, maybe, yeah, I didn't know what to pick else. I thought it was a good time, maybe also with the anniversary that we do a quote-unquote more popular game for Game Boy for once. So, yeah, and then this is one we actually can talk a lot about a speed run of, which is something you almost never hear, because I actually know my stuff, so, yeah, get hyped for that right after this short break.
Welcome back, everyone. Hope you enjoyed Bushroot's theme song there. So yeah, I mean, I guess before we super dive into the game, we should probably talk about the origin of Darkwing. I remember growing up with the cartoon, and it was one of my favorite cartoons next to Turtles and probably Sonic. Yeah, absolutely loved it. I remember waking up for Saturday morning or Sunday morning. I can't remember that part of it, but waking up for weekend morning cartoons and popping on to Disney. You had DuckTales, you had Darkwing Duck, you had Chip and Dale, you had all those great ones. But Darkwing Duck just had like a form of just like violence to it, which you really don't get on Disney nowadays. So let's just be fair. So, I know obviously this game was in America. I'm assuming the popularity of this game carried over to Europe as well, or the cartoon rather.
The cartoon, yeah, for sure. Like most people know, except for maybe younger listeners, there was something called a Disney Afternoon back in the day, which was basically an hour or half an hour. I think it was an hour. Right after most people got home from school, where they would show some cartoons from Disney, and of course, like you already said, we had DuckTales and we got Chip and Dale, and then we also got Darkwing Duck after a while, and then I think a few years later it was Aladdin and Goof Troop and things like that. So that was always something to look forward to when you got home. At least in Europe, it was every day on TV during the week. I don't know how that was in America. And yeah, Saturday mornings there were also cartoons. Mostly not these ones. For us, there were different ones like Kenshin. Rurouni Kenshin was one of them. Which is weird that they aired that, actually. Because that's one bloody anime, if you've never seen that before. And also very political, to be fair. But yeah, this was part of that afternoon block, at least after school. As far as I could see, it ran from 1991 to 1992, which is not that long, to be fair. And it had basically 3 seasons. First season having like 65 episodes, and the subsequent seasons only having like 13 episodes. So I'm not sure how the season works. I wanted to say how the seasoning works, but that's probably for a recipe for making Darkwing Duck. But yeah, so it had like a 100 episode run in total, which is kind of low, I feel like, because this was a very, very popular cartoon, but apparently it just got scrapped after a while, and I'm not sure why.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know either. One thing I don't know. Some people think that Darkwing's a spinoff too of what DuckTales, like the old DuckTales show from the '80s, and I don't think it's a spinoff at all because I don't remember a young duck in DuckTales outside of the two nephews and the niece and Scrooge. Like I don't recall much of anything DuckTales relating to Darkwing Duck at all, aside from them being ducks.
Yeah, no, it's most people get confused by that because a lot of the characters that are actually in DuckTales also make an appearance in Darkwing Duck. Like Launchpad is basically also the pilot of Darkwing Duck. Magica is in it as well as one of the villains. Sometimes Scrooge even makes an appearance here and there, and also the nephews make an appearance here and there. But they're not really tied together in any shape. It's just like a little cameo actually that shows up. Besides Launchpad, because he's a very important character in Darkwing Duck, of course. But yeah, it has literally nothing to do with each other. And even the creator Ted Stones stated in 2016 that basically they are in different universes, kind of like you can. Like imagine Amazing Spider-Man and Ultimate Spider-Man being in two different universes. So they have nothing to do with each other, but they might like intertwine during some points.
Huh. It's a good comparison between Spider-Man. I didn't even think of that comparison at all. That's good.
Yeah, thank you, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse again for go see that movie. It's great.
It is a very good movie. But yeah, again, before we dive into the games, like we had comics that came out for Darkwing Duck too. Like we were talking a little bit before the podcast, before we started recording about the comics, and that I think there's like what 3 iterations of the comics now at this point. You had like the original Disney one, you had the Joe Books one, and you had the IDW one. I only knew of 2 of the 3. I didn't know of. I only thought there were 2. I didn't realize there were 3 until Mo told me. But like those books are expensive. Like that, the original Disney one is like $120.
Yeah, it's sadly they started making these comics during the downfall of Disney Comics. So they're in the 80s or even earlier, they already started making like the DuckTales comics, and like at least we had that. I'm not sure if that was a thing in America, but we had like a weekly magazine called Donald Duck, which featured like comics of all the Disney characters back then from the Disney afternoon cartoons. So you always had a DuckTales comic in it. You had a Donald Duck comic in it. You had what's the rabbit called again from that very racist movie? I keep forgetting it. Is it just Brother Rabbit or something? But you had a lot
I know
of
who you're
those.
talking about now. Yeah. I can't remember the name. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's like Brother Rabbit, yeah.
I think it's Brother Rabbit, yeah. But you had like those comics tied in into a weekly magazine with a lot of ads, of course, for all Disney products. So that was pretty popular from like in the 80s until the start of the 90s. But then suddenly people weren't interested anymore because those comics were a little bit too childlike, I would say, compared to some of the episodes that were airing on TV. So that led to the downfall, and because they started making Darkwing Duck right around that time, it just didn't last long, and they had to cancel it. So
Yeah, I mean, they were originally going to do 4 issues, rather, of the Darkwing comic. But they afterwards, they kept going. I think they made up to like 16 volumes of the Darkwing Duck comic. So, yeah, interesting.
yeah, and yeah, they tried to revive it 2 times. after that, but only a few issues appeared, even though they were pretty well drawn and like very dark comics. Definitely for a Disney, yeah, IP, I would say, I guess.
Yeah.
They were pretty dark. I also remember, and I'm not sure what it was called, but it was also when I was like 12 years old or 10 years old or something. They made a new Donald Duck comic book set in the future. Him still living in the Duck Tower. I don't know what Scrooge's tower is called, but was set in the future, and he was a superhero. And those are also pretty dark comics, actually. So a lot of deaths and things like that. So they try to go a little bit darker, but again, yeah, people did not like that for their characters. So those things also got canceled pretty fast.
Yeah, I don't recall having like a Donald Duck magazine, like something like that in America. I do recall having magazines having comics in them, like Nintendo Power having like the Zelda comic and stuff like that in it. Like I do know we had magazines that did that, but I can't recall a magazine that was just comics like that at all.
Yeah, maybe it was just a European thing. It might only have come out in the Netherlands and Belgium and Luxembourg, for all I know, because yeah, they were pretty
Yeah, I
Dutch,
remember.
I guess.
I remember there being racks. Like you had like you had like the normal magazine rack on the wall, and at the very very bottom on the floor basically was all of your gaming magazines, because in the 90s, like no one gamed really, right? Like you played Nintendo casually, you played Super Nintendo casually, you played Game Boy casually. Like it wasn't, there was no esports back then, right? So and people deemed video games a waste of time, waste of space, waste of money, whatever. So it was always at the very bottom, but I always remembered, excuse me, that there was like at least 3 comic book spinning racks next to the magazine rack. So like you would always have, the latest, you would always have the most recent comic and then last volume's comic in this rack as well too. And I definitely remember seeing a couple of Disney comics in there, probably DuckTales if I remember correctly. And I know I've read a Darkwing Duck comic way back in the day too. But yeah, I mean, I remember all of that. I mean, that's basically not non-existent now, but I do remember how the magazines were portrayed. You had the adult ones at the top and the worthless ones at the bottom. But yeah. Huh. I wish we had a magazine that was nothing but comics.
we have quite a few of those, actually. They're always to print like 1 or 2 pages from an upcoming comic. Like the market in Belgium, at least, has been a lot different than it has been in America. Like I'm just gonna go with any superhero comic right here. If it gets produced in America, it's one of those floppy magazine comics, I would say, like quickly printed with a lot of ads in it and stuff like that. And after some time, after a bunch of volumes have actually been written, they make a hardcover of it, or like a trade paperback, I think it's called, which is a collection of those comics, and that is an actual book you can get without all the ads in it. For Belgium, it's completely the different way, actually. We just make hardcover copies of a story which has all of it in it, and sometimes there are indeed some of those magazines that come out weekly that print 1 or 2 pages in it just to promote the actual release of the comic. So it's kind of different. Also, a lot of American comics have like separate, how would you call it, like iterations of it. Like I'm gonna go back to Spider-Man because that's the one I know the most of. You had Amazing Spider-Man, you had Spectacular Spider-Man,
so many series. Yeah,
you have like one shots, you have all those things. I would say 5 years ago that did not exist in Belgium at all. You just had your line of comics, which is just always the comic of that person or that character, and that's it. But since like 5 years ago, they have been doing like guest artists that make one shots and things like that. So that's becoming a lot more popular here as well. But that's something that didn't exist a few years back. So it's a completely different market, but it's changing a lot now.
Our comics here are very weird because like I've been reading comics since I was 5 years old, and like so I have some comics from 80s or late 80s, early 90s, and I found a couple recently. I found a couple Green Lantern ones, and I read through them and I was like, oh yeah, this is cool. And then yeah, like halfway through the comic, you'd have like one full page of like either cigarettes, because that's how it was back in the day, or candy, a toy, something along the lines, right? And then it'd just be the rest of the comic. And then recently, I started collecting the Thanos series, the new one that came out with this past month, and there's ads, but the ads are like on the ends now. So like either like right at the beginning or right at the end. And after a while, like you said, we'll print like a volume one. Like if it's a big series, like The Walking Dead, for example. The Walking Dead graphic novels. If, we'll have volume 1, which is like 1 through 10, basically, and that's a hardcover. Then you have like the super deluxe edition or whatever it is. It's like volumes like 1 through 50 or whatever. And the book is so big, it's like a tome. It weighs 1 billion pounds. But then like we have mangas here, or mangas, however you want to pronounce it, in America as well too. And they don't have any advertising in them at all. So like I'm reading through the Zelda mangas right now, and there's no advertising in them whatsoever. I've read through some of the Full Metal Alchemist ones. There's no advertising. So it's just really, it's interesting on how comics are portrayed in America, and depending on the type of comic is really dependent on what you're going to get. Like there's just no consistency between them at all. So
yeah, it makes sense though, like why it gets printed that way originally in America, because like they produce, if you just take one series, it produces mainly one of them each week, pretty much. Or in the older days, it was one each month.
It's like one a month. It's like one a month still.
But now it's almost one a week. It's like 2 or 3 releases per month. So you need advertisers, of course, to pay everybody to make that work. So that's normal, and then you just combine them into one book afterwards. So here it is kind of the same for some magazines. Like there's still the Spirou magazine is still going on. That might actually be the only one that's still going on. But yeah, those portrayed some pages of like the French comics of Belgium before they get released. So it works in the same matter. But the main line that everybody buys are just the comics that come out eventually, and they get released like once every 3 months, if even. So Spirou, for example, is my favorite comic book series. Like it existed since the 80s, even longer before that, but there only has been 55 volumes of it. So they did take a hiatus for over 10 years though, but yeah, it gets released like maybe 3 times a year that there's a new one. So
yeah, like we have so many series going on at once. I think right now there's 2 Spider-Man series happening right now. I think there's 3 Batman series happening right now. It's really hard to keep up with. But like finding comic books in stores now it's actually really hard because everything's going digital. Like when I bought Spider-Man for PS4, it's like, hey, here's a free month of Marvel comic books online. Ooh. It's like, I'm like, cool, but I'd rather just hold a comic book though. So, yeah, comic books are now starting to get hit with the digital age, and it's almost sad to see it go because I like holding. There's just something to holding a comic book and like laying down on the couch or laying in bed and reading it. Like it's just something nostalgic to it for me, I guess. But
Yeah, for me it's the same. Like I do remember when I still had a subscription to Amazing Spider-Man, which is already 7 years ago, probably.
old, yeah.
That when you got the actual comic, every one of them came with a code to get the free download for the digital version. Though I don't know if they still do that, but that's at least pretty cool.
Yeah, they do. Even strategy guides do that now. Like I'm a big collector of strategy guides. Fun fact that no one ever knows about. I have like every Zelda strategy guide known to man, and the newer ones that you get from Prima, they give you a code to download or to see to have the digital edition. Basically, it's like a giant PDF.
Mm-hmm.
So it's way of the future.
Yay!
Oh yeah, we're talking about video games too, aren't we? We gotta
Oh
do
yeah,
that. We
yeah.
gotta do that.
This is definitely a video game podcast. Usually only around the 40-minute mark, we actually start talking about video games.
Oh yeah, Darkwing Duck. Yeah, going back to Darkwing Duck now. Came out in 1993 by Capcom. Published by Capcom and Sunsoft. Fun fact about that is that I don't know if this is true for NES, but for Game Boy, you could have two different labels for Darkwing Duck. One that says Capcom and one that says Sunsoft.
Yeah, and in Europe there are even more covers than that, because some of them have an extra like logo printed on them, some of them don't. I don't know even why it's on there or not. But yeah. The thing is with like there's like, I found a list at least of quite a few Game Boy games that just get re-released after a while. So that's why there's Sunsoft versions of it, because they re-released the game. There's plenty others that that have that. Why? No idea. Maybe because Capcom wasn't interested anymore in reprinting it or something.
Possible, yeah.
But yeah, Sunsoft has done a lot of them actually releases of games. And it's not like Player's Choice editions or anything. It's literally just a reprint of the game.
Yeah, a straight up reprint of it all. Like look at Legend of Zelda for NES. Like you have the gold cart and you have the gray cart. The gray cart was the re-release of the game, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Just things like that. I always find it interesting to see that, like, because I have a lot of carts that are I consider dupes, but they have different labels on them. And I have the two Darkwing Duck carts with Capcom and Sunsoft on it. So I didn't realize they made or they had more in Europe. That blows my mind.
Yeah, I think it's just one other variation, but it has like a little logo on it. I'm not sure even what it is, but I think it's a French version of the game, if I remember correctly. Which is not in French, by the way, just the one that got printed in France. But it's just in English.
Huh. We're not going to go on that tangent. We've already been on a long one. So yeah, composer. We actually have a composer for this game.
Yeah, with information on the composer, which is very rare. But yeah, all the music in this game was composed by Yasuaki Fujita, also known as Bun Bun.
Bun Bun. Yeah, he was a game composer, a video game composer, and sound designer for mostly with Capcom, I believe. I know he did Mega Man 3 music. Because Snake Man is 10 out of 10 best Mega Man song in the world. I know he did Little Mermaid, obviously Darkwing Duck. according to your notes here, he did Breath of Fire. I've never played Breath of Fire, so I don't know what that game actually is about. I don't even think I've ever watched anyone play Breath of Fire.
Yeah, it doesn't get played that much, but yeah, it's an RPG. So well, I think the best known of it is Breath of Fire 3, I guess.
Huh.
They're fun. They're they're great. Can always check those out. They're not on Game Boy though, so
I couldn't find this. I tried looking a little bit, but I couldn't find any of like his current works. Like, is he just out of the industry now, or?
yeah, I think he doesn't do much anymore. It's mostly been on older series. Like the list that I saw didn't include any modern games at all. He was also one of the keyboardists. Is that a word? Keyboard players? Keyboardists? Okay, sure. I guess
Keyboardist, yeah.
Keyboardist, yeah, sure. But yeah, he was the keyboardist for the Capcom house band, Alf Lila. But they disbanded in the late 1990s, so they don't actually are around anymore, but they actually had an in-house band. And you might very much know his work because he created that little jingle that played, at least back in the day when the Capcom logo showed up. So like that thingy. You heard. Yeah, something like that. So that's actually his work.
Yeah, you hear it a lot in the. You hear it in every Capcom, but you if you heard it, you'd be like, oh, that's from Mega Man 7, Mega Man X, Mega Man whatever.
Yeah.
If you heard it, you would know it for sure. We did a really good job, voicing it. 10 out of 10 on our part.
Definitely. Yeah. Sounded exactly 100% like it.
It's yeah. Plot. Too long don't read. Steelbeak is out to attack St. Canard.
Yeah, and that's pretty much it.
Darkwing's got to stop him.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, that
is literally the plot of the game.
That's the short and narrow of it all right there.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to get like real deep into the lore, you have Bushroot, Wolf Duck, which we'll get into later. Megavolt, Liquidator, Quackerjack,
Moriarty,
and then Steelbeak. Am I missing one?
No, that's all of them.
Okay.
It's,
yeah, I couldn't remember the Joker Duck. I was like, come on.
Yeah, it's Quackerjack. But yeah, Steelbeak is the head of an organization called Fowl, because he's a chicken. Well, he's not he's a rooster. He's a rooster, so of course he has an organization called Fowl, which stands for Fiendish Organization for World Larceny.
Yep.
Larceny. Oh, Wait, isn't larceny spelled differently though?
Maybe, but it's larceny.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what it stands for. So yeah, they're trying to take over Saint Canard, which is French for duck, I guess.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I don't know French.
Yeah,
so.
That's French for duck for sure, or another type of flying thing that we eat. And yeah, Darkwing Duck has to stop them, and he works for the organization called Shush, which is also an acronym, but because they're so shush, nobody actually knows what Shush stands for.
Nope.
True fact. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a plot. There's not much more to it.
Pretty straightforward. Gameplay, though, we'll actually talk about this because even though the gameplay is pretty simple, there's actually a decent amount to it. You can definitely tell that Capcom took the success of Mega Man and put it into Darkwing Duck. It is a pretty typical platform shooter, skinned after Darkwing Duck. So you'll see very, very similar sprites and some very unsimilar sprites. the game has a special weapon energy called gas. So if you can think back to Mega Man, even you have weapon energy for your specialty weapons, right? Your Seeking Snake, your Gemini Laser, your whatever. Same concept with the gas. It caps up to 99. And there are a few special weapons throughout the game. You have the arrow, which I believe does the most damage in the game. And it creates a temporary platform that you can stand on and hang on. You have, I call it the drop spark. I don't know exactly what it was called, but basically you shoot this like heavy spark that hits the ground and breaks into two and goes across horizontally across the plane. It's kind of useless, but it's good against Megavolt. And then you have like this lightning bolt shot, which you shoot and it goes into it cones in front of you, but like not in the middle. It just shoots one lightning bolt, up angled and down angled. It's actually a pretty useless weapon in my opinion.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of any more. Like I knew those three off the top of my head. I don't think there was more, were there?
No, that's literally it. You have arrow gas, heavy gas, and lightning gas. That's all there is. Also, you can only have one of them on you at the time, so it's not like Mega Man when you defeat the boss that you get his power up or something. Literally, these things are spread throughout the stage as a container, and you can pick up whichever you want or need. Mostly want. You don't ever really need them unless you're playing it blind and you're just playing it casually and you want to get like extra lives or find extra bonus rooms and things like that, but otherwise you pretty much will not use them at all. The heavy gas isn't that useless though. Like for casual play, it's actually very useful for some of the tougher enemies you have to hit more than once. The way the heavy gas works is that the moment you shoot it, the big ball that comes out does damage, but when it touches the ground and splits up, it does damage again, so you can use that to your advantage to hit bigger guys that you usually have to shoot 6 times with your normal gun. So that's pretty much the best use of it. The arrow does do the most damage, but it's more like like the Mega Man items or like Gary in Dr. Wily's Revenge, where it's mostly used as a tool to get to other places you normally wouldn't be able to reach. But we'll talk about that thing later as well. And then there's that electrical thingy that is...
It's awful.
Actually useless except for one time, but I'll get back to that later as well during the speedrun section.
Yeah. So yeah, the game consists of... Oh, I forgot one enemy. The idiot with the wrenches.
Yeah, Moriarty. I said
you
that one
said that? Okay.
while you were saying it, yeah.
Oh, that's probably why I didn't hear you. Yeah. Idiot wrench guy. Yeah, so the game consists of 7 stages. You're only presented 3 at a time, which I find kind of interesting. You can choose between the 3, any of them that you want to do. And then, yeah, once you go and you just do your normal stage things, it's your typical hold right and jump over pits and climb or fall down, whichever the case may be. The boss encounters are really... I find the boss encounters to be pretty fun because each boss is pretty unique. You have Wolf Duck, who is a scrawny little duck until the moon comes out, and when the moon is full, turns into Werewolf Duck and throws crates at you, and then turns back into scrawny little duck again. That's when you can hit him, because once it's Werewolf Duck, you can't hurt it at all. And then you have Megavolt, which it's kind of a boring fight, where he just like walks across the bottom and shoots a lightning bolt up at your last known location. It's a pretty basic fight. I believe he jumps up to your platforms as well too, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it goes from left to right in the stage,
Yeah.
and there's like 2 platforms on each side. He jumps up to. If you're in front of him, he just shoots in front of him to hit you. If you're on the other side of the room, he shoots upwards, and then it drops from the ceiling wherever you're standing. There's also like a lightning bolt at the bottom of the stage, which you have to dodge if you stay
yeah,
there.
if you go
But
down
you
there,
should
yeah.
never go there,
No.
basically.
No. You have Quackerjack. He's kind of a Quackerjack's the second worst in my opinion. There's 2 levels to the fight, or 2 planes, right? You have an upper plane and a bottom plane, and typically Quackerjack is at the bottom plane, and you have to basically shoot Quackerjack, jump up, and quickly fall back down, because if DW goes to the top plane, Quackerjack will just jump up there and stay up there until you fall down, then Quackerjack will fall down. All while you have this little duck thing at the top dropping stuff on top of you. So
Yeah.
kind of a pain to do. That's when heavy gas comes in handy for that fight.
Definitely.
And then you have Liquidator, which was, if you guys don't remember from the cartoon, was the sewer dog, basically. It has a little mound thing that like waves through the water, so you know where it's going to be at, you know where it's going to come up, and you shoot it. He pops out of the water, hands up in the air, and then like some fish come up. You had to shoot him while he's out of the water in his normal dog stance and dodge the fish as they get thrown at you. Bushroot, what a boss fight Bushroot is. Bushroot has 2 planes again as well, I believe. A top and a bottom plane. And Bushroot runs left and right, similar to Quackerjack. However, on both sides of the screen, or no, when you shoot Bushroot would jump on either the left or right side of the screen. I don't know if it's predictable or not. I don't. Well, yeah, I'll let Mo discuss that. And then he commands his flowers to throw 3 or 4 balls at you, and you have to try and dodge them. And some of those balls are quite difficult to dodge. And the fact that every time you hit Bushroot, he goes to jump on top of the flowers means you don't get to hit him a whole lot of times. So that fight, it's almost like an endurance round for that fight.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Molarity, which is a pretty easy cheese fight, honestly. There are three machines with flashing bulbs in them, and if you shoot out a bulb, Molarity will run to that and repair it, and the machines with the flashing bulbs also shoot balls or fireballs at you, one of the two. And Molarity will throw wrenches at you as well, but Molarity is more vulnerable when you break a machine, so you can actually cheese that fight pretty hard. Then you got Steelbeak. Steelbeak's a pretty interesting fight. I would say the opening to that fight is the hardest part of the fight. Because you need to shoot down this door in front of Steelbeak to basically activate his trap card. All while you have to shoot down or dodge 2 flying enemies coming at you from the top of the screen, and you're already at the top of the screen trying to shoot this door down, so you don't have a lot of time to react. You gotta do some fancy jumping between some hanging objects, and then once Steelbeak is down, he will either run across, and if you get on the floor, he'll pick up a steel plate and throw it at you, and then. But if you try to shoot him with a steel plate, your bullets will bounce off. So you have to shoot him when he doesn't have the steel plate in his hand. Then yeah, that's all the bosses right there. I think all the bosses are actually a pretty unique thing in this game. I like all of them.
Yeah, you can see that they definitely look to Mega Man, how that game worked, and went with that, actually, with that same kind of a feel to it. I'm not sure. Wait, this was 93, so Mega Man 5 had already come out, I believe.
Yeah, because
the lot of the Mega Man bosses are basically nothing if you have their weakness, so you never actually see how their pattern works. But yeah, they're also always very interesting boss designs. But yeah, for this game, as there are no real weaknesses per se, you get to see everything that they actually programmed them to do. So it's pretty cool to see how they react to everything you actually throw at them. And that's what makes them unique as well. And Steelbeak you can just compare to Wily, basically, where first he's in a big robot that you have to destroy, and then he comes out. For Wily, he's usually in his little saucer, but Steelbeak just literally himself comes out of his protective barrier. So it's a two-stage fight, which makes it a little bit harder. Like in Mega Man, both of them are separate fights. In this one, it's just one fight. Luckily, there is a full heal after you destroyed the protective barrier that you can pick up to heal yourself. So, yeah. But
that's probably one thing to touch on too. Like you have 4 hit points basically, so if you get hit 4 times, you're dead. There are continues, but I want to say the continues are limited.
Nah, it's unlimited. It's just like any, it's just like any Mega Man game. You can just play it as long as you want.
And the 1-ups are adorable Darkwing Duck dolls that drop off enemies or just randomly in the stages. And you can get 1-ups via points as well too when you collect the gold and jewels and stuff like that that drop off enemies. So
yeah, there's I think each 10,000 points you get an extra life as well.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, this is not the easiest game blind, I would say. It's
tough.
It's easier than Mega Man for sure, but there are some very tough stages and very tough boss fights if you do not know what you're doing. So it could take you a while to get through it, but once you know the game, it's actually really easy to play through it pretty fast, like definitely in less than half an hour.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Blind Darkwing Duck took me 20 minutes. The NES version takes me about a half hour. So
yeah, it's definitely not a long game if you know it. Like if you haven't played it before, it might take you from like an hour and a half to 2 hours just to get familiar with it. But it shouldn't be more than that.
Yeah. Something I do appreciate about the box art, I looked at the European box art too, and it looked pretty much the same. Something I can appreciate about the box art is that they kept it true to the Darkwing Duck cartoon.
Yeah, it's pretty much a screenshot from the cartoon, you would say. Yeah, there's nothing more to it. It's just Darkwing Duck on his bike together with Launchpad in it, and they're crossing the... I don't know what the bridge is called, but that's actually where his base is. Like, if you ever watch the cartoon, he drives up one of the... What are those called? Thingies that hold up the parts of the bridge. Those railings.
The cables and stuff,
yeah. So he rides his bike up one of those, and then he drops down at the top of one of the towers, and that's where his base is. So, yeah, they're shooting away from that with a very, very nice full moon in the background. So, with a starry night. It just really looks like it's a cartoon, which is great.
Yeah, I'm really, really happy they stuck to that. Because, like, there are some of them that they just... Lion King, for example. Like, the Lion King cover art is just dumb. It doesn't even have anything to do with the Lion King on it, so...
Yeah. Well, that's a difference, of course, between... most of the Disney games on NES were all made by Capcom. Only a few of them were actually made on Game Boy by Capcom. Like if you go into the era of Lion King and Pocahontas and things like that, those were all made by Virgin, which is not a great company at all. So I'm not sure why they cut ties with Capcom. But we could have had like 5 more years of amazing Disney Capcom games. But yeah, that stopped pretty much after Darkwing Duck, I would say.
Yeah, I would say Darkwing Duck was probably the last one for Game Boy, in a way. Yeah. Huh. You know who doesn't appear in the game, though? I mean, there's a lot of people, I guess, that don't appear in the game.
Yeah.
But Niga Duck doesn't appear in the game.
Yeah, yeah. Negaduck is one of the most important
Yeah.
adversaries that Darkwing Duck has, I would say. There are a lot more, like besides the ones that show up in the game. But Negaduck is one of his most fought adversaries, and it's basically him, but the bat him.
He releases the enemies from the jail. Like, gotta stop him before you can stop anyone.
Does he?
Yeah, in the comics he does. Yeah.
Oh, in the comics he does. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about the cartoon. It's been a long time since I watched the cartoon. But
Yeah, I have no idea.
in the
Either.
comics, he releases all of the enemies from prison.
There
Yeah,
we go. Yeah, if for people who actually do not know Darkwing Duck, it's pretty much Batman, but more comical.
duck.
Yeah, like the rest is pretty much completely the same as Batman. So
and then Wolf Duck is not in the cartoon.
nope, or in any other sort of media, so not in the comics either.
Right,
Yeah,
but
he's an
he is in the
original
video
one.
game.
Yeah, yeah, it was made specifically for this game. Oh, that's pretty cool. That they actually made an original character, which actually stands out quite a bit because it's a pretty cool design
It's a
of
fun
an enemy.
fight.
Yeah, and it's weird that they didn't use him in the later comics actually, because would have been an interesting character to go with.
And then
Yeah,
they
the
have
other
that
three.
they have the remake and whatnot.
Yeah,
You put in here.
yeah. Well, I'll go over the other. What the hell is happening with my mouse here?
I don't know.
I'll go over the other trivia. Like in the video game itself, it's stated that all the villains are working for Fowl, but actually, Megavolt, Bushroot, Liquidator, Crackerjack, and Moriarty are never actually agents of Fowl in the TV series or in the comics. So it's kind of weird that they made the story like that, but I guess it just would fit because Steelbeak is like the biggest bad guy in the entire Darkwing Duck universe, so they all just made the other ones work for him. But actually, he uses a completely different set of villains, but they are not portrayed in the game at all. So that's an interesting little trivia thingy. But yeah, in 2018. They were actually they tried remaking the game. The people of Headcanon were trying to do that. And for people who do not know who Headcanon is, that's the people who helped make Sonic Mania. So, yeah, it's pretty big. And they actually made a demo which is free to download. They actually put it on the internet like a few months ago. So you can download it for free. They gave it to Capcom, but Capcom just rejected it completely. So that's sad because we could have seen a new Darkwing Duck game after all this time.
Do you think Capcom may reconsider semi soon with them re-releasing a bunch of really old games? Like they just came out with Resident Evil 2 remake, right? And they had Resident Evil 1 remake a few years back. Like
I'm not sure. Like they did release the Disney Afternoon collection,
right? Yep.
Which was great. Which had Darkwing Duck on it, right? The NES version, I think so. Yeah, so maybe, but like, yeah, Capcom has been a weird company. They're actually starting to to do what they have to do back again after quite a while. So maybe they would reconsider it if there's enough tweets or something for it. But that would be cool because I haven't played the demo yet, but I watched it and it looks pretty cool. Except maybe for the grappling hook, which is more of a Bionic Commando thing than a Darkwing Duck. Well, he has the grappling hook actually.
But I don't like Bionic Commando.
Yeah, so I don't know if they should use that per se. But yeah, otherwise, it could be cool to get a revived game.
I wonder if Capcom rejected it just because of licensing.
That is a possibility, of course, because I think they really need to have the approval of Disney as well, because it's still their IP, of course.
And like Darkwing Duck hasn't been around for 20 some years, you know, so it's like Is
Yeah.
Disney going to like approve a license that it's been dormant for 20 some years? It's a
Yeah,
interesting
besides the
scenario.
comic books, it has been. Wait, I can't count. It has been 25 years, basically.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
we're old.
That's really insane. 25 years.
We're just old.
Yeah. Wow.
General reception of the game. People liked this game. From what I found, people really enjoyed this game. It stayed true, for the most part, to the Darkwing Duck cartoons and comics. So it was just like you were playing a Darkwing Duck cartoon, essentially, but 8-bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I couldn't find anything bad about the game at all. So
Nah, everybody who plays it loves this game, so yeah.
yep. So yeah, we're gonna take another short break. When we come back, surprisingly, we haven't given you our thoughts and history with the game yet, even though we've been talking like crazy. So yeah, when we come back from a short break, we'll give you thoughts, history of the game, speedrunning segment, all the happy stuff that you guys come to listen to. Welcome back, everybody. So thoughts and history. We'll start with Mo, because I know Mo has a lot of history with this game. So
Yeah, back in the days when I was still a wee little lad. Wait, that's not how you say that. A young wee lad? A little wee lad?
wee little lad.
Well,
wee
okay,
lad,
well,
yeah.
wee lad, whatever. I actually rented this game in the video store. So I played it quite a few times because of that. I never actually owned a copy of it, but I did love this game because, yeah, it's just a great game. I grew up with Mega Man games, so this was right up my alley. It was a little bit easier than the Mega Man game, so I could get through it faster during like a weekend of renting this out. Years later, I actually did buy a copy of it on a flea market, but sadly later I found out that it was a fake card. The cover was a little bit too blurry to be a real card, so I opened it up and I saw, yeah, this is definitely not the original game, so that was sad. But I just ordered me an actual copy of it afterwards. Pricing wise, it's like a $10 game, maybe 15 at this point, so it's not that expensive. It's easy to find because there have been so many releases of it, so... But yeah, played it a bunch when I was a kid, and then when I started streaming and I started doing Game Boy games again, I replayed it and I loved it so much that I was like, maybe I should start speedrunning this game. Back in the days that I actually still speedrun games on Game Boy, because I already did Mega Man, I did Felix the Cat on Game Boy, and then I picked this up and I absolutely fell in love with the speedrun of this game, which I will be talking about during the speedrun section, of course, so I'm not gonna dive into that one. But yeah, I've played this game for many hours so far. That's a little bit my history with the game.
So yeah, my history. I owned the NES game. I still own the NES game from my childhood. So that was my exposure to Darkwing Duck game. Obviously, watched the cartoon growing up. I knew a Game Boy version existed because I had a couple of friends with the Game Boy Darkwing Duck, and I did play it as a kid. Very, very, very briefly though. Like it was just one of those like, we had the 20-minute recess or whatever. You know, they tossed me their Game Boy, played it for a couple minutes, and handed it back. Basically, I wouldn't really get to like really play it until Tiny Tin number 2, back in 2016, 2015, whatever year that was. And then again, I played it for Game Boy Adventure. I've actually played it seldomly here and there too between then, because it is a fun game, and it's short. Like, it's just a quick, short game to play too, even casually. I have thought about speed running the NES version, not the Game Boy version. That's because I personally prefer the NES version because I like the colors. But
Okay.
but both are really good games. Don't get me wrong; they're both very good games. I personally, for Darkwing Duck, I want to see the purple colors. So that's just a me thing. Outside of that, though, love the cartoon, love the comics. It was just destiny that I would probably love the video game, even though that is not true for a lot of things when it comes to old retro games. But just doing a quick peek on eBay right now, the Game Boy game is weird. The American Darkwing Duck cart is about $30 to $50.
Oh wow!
The European Darkwing Duck cart is about 10 to 15.
That is strange.
And it's mostly the French code, so there must be a lot of French copies of Darkwing Duck out there. The NES is outstanding. Like, the NES copy is like $50 without the book and box. Like, with the box, it's like over $100. It's insane how expensive the NES version is right now. So, definitely a game you want to probably keep on your watch list, but maybe not pull the trigger quite yet on. So, unless you want the European copy of Darkwing Duck, where there's no reason not to, honestly. It's probably all in English anyway, so.
It is in English, yeah. I do own the European copy of it, but I bought it for like $5, so... But that was years ago, of course.
So... I'm laughing. I'm on eBay right now, and they have Darkwing Duck Famicom games that are just clearly bootlegs, and they look so funny. So yeah, I mean, that's my thoughts on history of the game. I have a lot more history with the NES version than I did the Game Boy version. I love both almost equally. I just like the NES version a bit more because I like to see the colors in Darkwing in the Darkwing Duck game. Mega Man and stuff like that I don't care about at all. Like, just give me the green and I'm good to go. But for some reason with Darkwing Duck, like, I like to see the colors. I don't know. I don't know why. Yeah. As for the speedrunning section, this is all you, Mo. This is all you.
This is probably gonna be the most detailed speedrunning section we've ever done. But yeah, mostly because I pretty much was the world record holder for this game for almost 2 years, I would say. So I put a lot of time into this game. But anyways, when I wanted to pick it up for speedrunning, there was only one run of it. And surprisingly, it was actually done by Bangera on ESA, as far as I remember. So he made the initial routing for this game. I don't remember exactly what his time is. I have the leaderboard here, and I see it's 16 minutes 29 seconds record, but I do not remember if he picked the game back up after I started running it, or that was his initial run. I see it was 5 years ago, so I would say it's actually the run that he did for ESA. So let's just go with that train of thought. So he was the initial router. When I picked it up, one other person started running it called Harstock, who's Spanish, I believe. Yeah, Spain. I can see it right here. So he started playing that as well. Sadly, and this is not trying to put him on the... What is it called? Slashing bench? That's not the word I'm looking for. Like,
but chopping block?
Chopping block, there we go. That's what I was looking for. He did kind of use the save state to load the game up every time, which is kind of frowned upon a lot in the speedrun community, and unless it's stated somewhere that you can use that. But because of RNG manipulation, we try to avoid doing that, because otherwise it's an unfair advantage. I'm not sure actually in the Kirby speedrun now. It's it's actually counting frames or something.
There's
now.
not a rule in place yet.
Yeah.
I don't believe there's a rule in place yet. But with the new findings of RNG manipulation, it's probably going to be put in.
Yeah, eventually.
Or at least, said like, hey, you can't do this.
Yeah, so yeah, that's a little history about that. So we did find out he was doing that, and we talked about it with him, and he stopped doing that. But the problem is with this game that it was just a save state after the initial startup of the game, because it's like 10 to 20 second wait you have to do because there's an unskippable cutscene at the start of the game, so it was kind of bothersome always having to wait for that after every reset, which happens a lot in this game, by the way. So yeah, he made a save state there, and yeah, but whatever, doesn't matter. He was a great runner. Him and I went against each other for quite a while, and then he stopped playing the game, but Fleck SR stepped in. Fleck SR is an Argentinian runner. No, Honduras. Where's Honduras? Is that a country? I guess that's a country.
It is a country.
It is a country. So yeah, he's from Honduras. He stepped up to the plate. So he improved some of the routing a lot in different parts of the game. So I had to adjust my route to his and vice versa. I did get a lot of help from PLD, which helped me basically set the best route for 2 years coming. But yeah, me and Vlakazar were up against each other for quite a while. I think we both tied at 14 minutes 51 seconds for quite a while. So that was already an improvement of like a minute and a half over Bangara's old route. But then both of our sum of bests were 14 minutes 40 seconds, and I managed to get a 14 minutes 45 seconds, and then Vlakazar gave up and moved on to other projects like Wario Land series and the Zelda series. But yeah, that was it for quite a while. Like, nobody played it anymore. Like, I didn't have to push myself to get a better time or anything, so the world record just stood there for quite a while until I guess it's pronounced Zimond, the Swedish runner. We all say Zymond, of course, because everybody just makes English words out of everything. But yeah, he's a Swedish speedrunner. He's the world record holder for Darkwing Duck on NES, even back then. I know him and Andy Swee are constantly bopping heads for the world record in Darkwing Duck NES. But yeah, he stepped in and he made quite a few improvements, or not so much improvements, but route changes completely to the game because he was so familiar with the NES version. And he ended up having the world record, which now is 13 minutes and 57 seconds, which is almost a minute better than what I had. And I was kind of out of the loop of speedrunning by then. I tried getting back into it, but I just couldn't find motivation to keep plowing through the game. So yeah, that's where the record is right now. That's all so been 2 years ago, and there is still room for improvement. So anybody who wants to pick it up, make sure you do so, because this is a really cool speedrun for a lot of different reasons. For any newcomer, I would suggest going with the old route, the one that me and PLD and Fleck SR basically made, and that is the so-called heavy gas route, which starts with the Liquidator stage, and the reason for that is because Liquidator is one of the biggest RNG problems in the entire game. The way Liquidator works is that he, at the start of the boss fight, he goes down into the water so you can't hit him, and he has different positions he can come out of. So what you want is that he pops up immediately so you can use the arrow gas on him, and you have to have at least 20 gas because you have to hit him 6 times, and then he's dead. So if that fight goes the way it should work, It's a 5-second fight. So the problem is him appearing immediately above water again is pure RNG. So that's a big problem. So that's why there's a lot of resets during this route in the initial stage. So that's a problem. But after that, you just go to Wolf Duck, you go to Quackerjack, you use the heavy gas on these bosses. So you're done with using the arrow until the very last stage, which is Steelbeak's Floating Fortress, I think it's called, where you switch back to the arrow gas, because the arrow gas does the most damage out of everything. It does 3 instead of 1 or 2, so you want to use that on Steelbeak to take him out pretty quickly. So that's the old route, where you mostly rely on heavy gas. The good thing about the heavy gas is that it only uses 2 of your gas points to shoot it. And as I said before, it basically uses a technique where you get as close as you can to the boss and you shoot it. So the initial shot does damage, and then the split also does damage to the boss. So you can take down most of the bosses pretty quickly. A very fun thing about the entire game, not depending on any of the routes, not the old route or the new route, is that the RNG factors in a lot of what you can do. Most of the game consists of damage boosting. So you do not have to deal with enemies at all, you just have to get through them as fast as you can, because on set parts of the stages there are always full health pickups, so you can just keep on going. You do have to take out some enemies, and enemies can drop a variety of things. Nothing, which is bad. They can drop gold or diamonds, which are just points, which is bad. They can drop small gas, which gives you 3 gas, I think, or even only 1, I don't even remember. Or they can drop big gas, which gives you 10. And the last thing is health, like 1 health point or like a full restore. So depending on what you get from the enemies you do have to kill, you might have a lot of gas that you can use to like shoot more arrows or heavy gas that you can use to take down enemies faster, or you can get more health, which you then can use to do more damage boosts, which saves, like, it's always a very small thing you can save. It's like half a second to a second maybe, but everything just depends on what enemies drop, which is really cool, because you just need to know the levels, know what you can do with what you have, so you can get through them as fast as possible. With the old route, the heavy gas route, you are less dependent on big gas drops, because heavy gas just uses a lot less. But yeah, that if you get stuck with not enough gas, you kind of have a problem. You always want to have 18 to 20 to have enough heavy gas to take down all of the bosses. So I'll jump into the new route now, which actually starts with Wolf Duck. So that's the initial stage you're on when you start the game. And for this boss, you, again, of course, use the heavy gas, because that's just the best thing you can use for him. After that, you go into Quackerjack, which also uses the heavy gas, so the fights are pretty much the same between both routes, the old and the new route. And after that, you go to Liquidator, picking up the arrow gas and never dropping it again. So you will be using the arrow gas for all of the subsequent bosses you will come across. But, like I said before, arrow gas uses a lot more gas points, so it's a lot more reliable on getting very good gas drops. So for newcomers, I would say learn the old route, because the boss fights pretty much stay the same. Even if you have an arrow gas or a heavy gas, doesn't matter. The patterns to take them out basically stay the same. But just being able to know, like, oh, I got this drop, I can do this throughout all the stages is very important. Not as much as important as precision platforming, as I could call it. But yeah, if you just know how to adapt to certain situations in each stage, it's very easy to get through the old route and at least got that with you. And then when you really, really, really want to start grinding the game to get like, yes, a sub my time, I would say, then you can switch over to the newer route, so you can adapt to using the arrow throughout most of the game. I would compare it to Mega Man 3, for example, where Gemini first was pretty much a staple for quite a while, and then it stopped first, and it just depends on what level of skill you are at the game to pick it up. So old route is definitely worth looking into before immediately picking up the newer route. There's a few things you do have to consider while playing this game. There is a hanging mechanic in the game, which you need to use to traverse through gaps or to get up to higher platforms. For some reason, sometimes you just literally fall off.
So bad.
Yeah, no idea why it is. Probably has to do with subpixels. As far as we can tell, we never really figured that out. But yeah, it's pretty awful, especially the final stage, right before you go into the Steel Beak fight. There is a very easy-looking hanging platforming section, but sometimes you just completely miss hanging on one of them and you fall down into a pit, which takes you back to the halfway point, and you picked up all the health pickups through the stage. They don't reappear, so you're completely lost by that point. It's just reset from there on out. What you also do have to be sure of is that your sprite boxes and the platform boxes are way bigger than they appear to be. For the hanging, also, basically, you can pretty much hang on the very last pixel off everything, so you can jump further than you think you could, and you can also land on platforms way earlier than you think you could. So kind of play around with that to see, like, hey, how does this work exactly? How much of my sprite of Darkwing Duck has to be on a platform to be able to stand on it? Hint, it's almost nothing. It's like the tip of your feet, basically. So, yeah, get familiar with that. And, yeah, the last thing is the boss RNG. For most of the bosses, it's a pretty cut and dry fight. Quackerjack, always the same fight if you know what you're doing. Moriarty, always the same fight if you know what you're doing. Same goes for Megavolt, always the same thing. The only real big problems are, for starters, Liquidator, because you have no idea when he's gonna pop up. The second problem is Bushroot. There is a way to make sure he kinda always does the same thing he needs to do. The problem is when he jumps out of the screen and he can land either left or right. That is completely RNG dependent. There's like no setup for that. So you have to watch how that fight is being done so you can do the most damage in the initial stage before he jumps up, and then hope that he lands on the right side so you can take them down in what we call a one cycle. If he lands on the left side, there is also a way to damage him enough to take him down in one cycle. But it is a very, 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 very technical fight. I hate it. Everybody hates it. Like, best music in the entire game for that stage, but the stage itself is already a travesty to get through. And then the boss fight is, yeah, it makes
like, he's one of my favorite villains, but man, is that fight just atrocious.
Yep,
even casually, it's brutal.
Yeah, it's just really not a fun stage to be in, or a boss fight to be in. Steel Peak, the initial start of the fight, the first part, is pretty much scripted if you speedrun it. It shouldn't be a problem unless one of those hanging things doesn't want to cooperate and you fall down. The second part should be scripted, but depending on if you're 1 or 2 pixels too far to the left or too far to the right, his pattern doesn't change, but if you're too far away from him, he picks up the save from the ground and starts throwing it at you, and you cannot damage him during that part. If you're close enough to him, he just starts walking from the left to the right, and you can keep on shooting. That's more of a thing that you have to get yourself familiar with, but it can still go wrong. Biggest thing is that you can maybe lose 2 seconds if it doesn't go the way it's supposed to work, but it's not that big of a deal. Bush root is the biggest problem of this game. Besides Liquidator, which is either you have to wait or you can take him down immediately. It's just a matter of if the RNG wants to behave or not.
I mean, Liquidator sounds like the Poppy Bro fight in KDL. Within like the first 20 seconds of the game, it's like, well, I'm either going to lose 4 seconds, lose 2 seconds, or be able to go right away. So,
Definitely, yeah. And if you just start with this game and you do the old route, which starts with Liquid Air, don't worry about it if it doesn't give you the best pattern. Like, you can always save the time there later if you're getting better at the game. So, after a while, if you hit that, like, I would say 15-minute mark of the speed run, you can start resetting constantly on Liquidator. Otherwise, just move on. And if you're doing the new route, it's the third stage, so it's even harder to just reset there. So yeah, I would not really think about it. And Bush route, you're gonna have fun with that guy. No. I think that's pretty much all I can say about this speedrun. I love speedrunning this game. Like, I've put so many hours into this game, more than any other game I ever speedrun. If you want any help with it, let me know, let PLD know, let Bangera know. I'm not sure if Zymon still does a lot with this game, probably not. But yeah, just reach on out. We can help you a lot with this. And it would be nice to see more runners of this game, because, yeah, again, it's been dead for 2 years now, so get on it.
Yeah, I have watched a lot of Darkwing Duck speedruns. I've watched you do it. I know I've watched Vlak. I've watched Simon. I watched Infinite Mystery do it a few times. I've watched ND do the NES version. I've watched Simon do the NES version. I've watched a lot. Yoka, Mexican Runner, all those guys. I've watched a lot of Darkwing Duck speedruns, and they're very fun to watch, but they look very, very technical. So,
yeah, definitely to get a really good time, it's gonna start getting really technical. But initially, getting fast through the game is not that much of a big deal. So it's fun to get into, at least, and it's a little bit more. How would I call it? Like, if Kirby is a baby speedrun game to get into, this is more like the middle way, like the middle
adolescent.
Yeah, it's like it's a bit tougher, but it's still pretty doable. And then after that, you get games like Wily's Revenge, which are not easy at all.
Mega Man 3 Game Boy.
Or that, yeah. So those are the harder ones. This is like the in-between game that is a better step up from Kirby. So, yeah.
Yeah. Huh. All right, well, when we come back, we're going to talk about some Game Boy community events coming up, some listener questions that we will answer, and you'll find out what the next episode is going to be about. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody. So, yeah, we got a few community events coming up. We just got done with Speedy Fists, Pixels for Peace, RGL's Retrothon. So we've definitely have entered marathon season for speedrunning. And there's plenty more events that I know I'm missing that I either A, don't know about, or just forgetting at this time of moment. But pressing forward, we have Power Up with Pride, summer. I call it the summer edition because they do it twice a year. June 7th through June 9th, and submissions for that are currently closed. So, fun fact, I submitted a lot of crazy games for that. Stay tuned Stay tuned for Goal School, because I can't wait to relearn that game. Then obviously we have Summer Games done quick in June 23rd through June 30th in Bloomington, Minnesota, so the same place as it was last year. And the only Game Boy game is Looney Tunes by Winterbit.
Yeah.
So I'll be there to support them while they play Looney Tunes, which is, I don't like the game. I don't like Elmer Fudd. So, but I'll be there to support the Game Boy run. That's what I do best. So, then July 12th through July 14th, we have Handheld Heroes, which submissions close at the end of May. So when this episode comes out, you have like 6 days or whatever it is to get your game submitted in. And it can be anything handheld related, from a Tiger electronic device, Atari Lynx, Game Boy, Game Gear, Game.com, whatever it may be. Game Duck, I don't care as long as it's handheld. Not the Switch, though, or the Virtual Boy. I fought for them, and then I failed both times. Then we have ESA Summer, July 19th to July 28th. I don't know if the submissions are open or closed for ESA. I don't know how submissions work for ESA, so...
No idea either.
I have no idea, but
I would say they're closed, yeah.
I would say they were closed, yeah. So, check that out. RPG Limit Break is already happening, so by the time this episode comes out, it'll be a month over, so. And we had one, well, I mean, technically we had two, but, you know, we have one listener question, yeah. And it was from Granite Hero. Why does everyone think the NES version is the better version? Because it has color, okay? Let's just be fair. It has color, and the hanging sections don't suck as much.
Yeah, like, for me, and I have played both versions, for me, at least, the Game Boy version is better, and not because I'm biased towards Game Boy, that has nothing to do with it, but especially because I also speedran the game in the past. The stages are a little bit more contained than the NES versions, even though the NES version the world record is like 11 minutes and something. So it's a shorter game, basically, for speedrunning, mostly because the arrow gun is a lot stronger in that one, because you can spam it. But yeah, for me, the Game Boy version is better. One, because in the NES version, when you shoot while you're jumping and you land, you get stuck for like a brief moment, so you cannot like just keep on going. So I think they kind of cleaned that up in the Game Boy port of this game. And I already forgot the second thing I was gonna say. So that's great. Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember. Maybe I'll think of it again in a few bits. But
we keep saying both versions. We keep forgetting that there's a TurboGrafx 16 version of this
Yeah,
game.
nobody.
So both versions of this game. Both versions are quite good games. Like, don't get me wrong, like, they're both very good games. Me personally, I like this game in color more than just the green monochrome that it gets put in for Game Boy. I do like the compactness of the Game Boy levels a lot more than the NES version, but some of the finicky things with the Game Boy version frustrate me, such as the hanging and some of the extended platforms that you don't necessarily know are extended, is a bit better in the NES version. To me, the level flow seems a bit better in the NES, just because of some of the grappling issues just aren't there. But both are very good games, so don't take away from any of them. So
Yeah, I remembered what the second reason is. It's the Wharf stage, which is the stage where you fight Megavolt. In the NES
Oh,
version, there
right.
is an enemy that is not present in the Game Boy version, which are these kind of flying squirrels that are really, really annoying to deal with.
Oh,
All the
yeah.
speedrunners of the NES version will agree with me. Yeah, those are the worst part of the entire game, and they're not present in the Game Boy version, which makes the Wharf level not only casually a lot easier, but also for the speed run a lot easier. So yeah, that's the second reason why I like the Game Boy version a
I
little
legit
better.
forgot about that enemy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, the thing is, like in the NES version of the game, it's easier to jump over enemies. I must say, like there's a
Yeah.
lot of turtles in the game that are really hard to take down.
The
But in the
worst.
NES version, you can jump over them easily. In the Game Boy version, you can jump over them, but it's so super tight
It's
that we never
tough.
do that. For example, the way we mostly deal with it in the Game Boy speedrun is by despawning them or just damage boosting through them completely. So
Yep. And then the TurboGrafx 16 is nothing like the NES or the Game Boy version, so have fun
yeah.
with that. Um,
Yeah, I also don't think that everybody thinks the NES version is the better version. I think most people have only just played the NES version,
yeah,
which is
yeah.
mostly the problem when it comes to Game Boy games. So
There
yeah,
is a worse version, and it's called the TurboGrafx 16
yeah,
version.
yeah, which is nothing like the NES or Game Boy game.
If you all want an experience, if you all want a Darkwing Duck experience, go ahead. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say one is better than the other when it comes to NES and Game Boy. They both very much have their strong suits. They both have their weaknesses, so
Yeah,
I put them on par with each other.
yeah, the NES version plays a little smoother. Like the Game Boy one is a little bit more slow than the
It
NES version. So
it does get laggy at
yeah,
points, like
and
when
the
you
boss.
get like three of those turtles on the screen. Whew.
Yeah, well, not only like in terms of lag, but also the general running of the game is just a little bit
Yeah,
faster. It's also easier to take down bosses in the NES version because you can like spam that arrow. So you can have two of them on screen at the same time. Oh no, wait. Yeah, you can have two of them, but the moment you shoot the second one, the first one drops to the ground, but its hitbox is still there. So when you shoot the arrow in an enemy, it basically keeps on doing damage while it's dropping. That's why it's a lot easier to take down bosses in that game. Yeah,
yeah. So like, yeah, you shoot the arrow, and as it's about to hit the enemy, or as it hits the enemy, you press the shoot button again, and it drops the arrow. And as it's dropping, it does damage to that enemy. So
yeah. So that makes boss fights better in the NES version for sure. And boss fights are also a little better because the playing area is a lot bigger. Like I'll take Quackerjack for an example. In the Game Boy version, you have two levels, which are very constrained. Whereas in the NES version, you have three levels you can like flip through, and it's easier to dodge the little guy dropping bananas on your head. And yeah, the same goes for Bushroot. Actually, in the Game Boy version, you have the bottom level and the top level, whereas in the NES version, you have three levels, and you can position yourself better to shoot at Bushroot to actually hit him. Where in the Game Boy version, you cannot. Once he's up there, you basically cannot hit him anymore.
good old Bushroot.
Yeah, he's always a problem.
No matter what version you play, even in the TurboGrafx 16, he's a problem.
I'm not even sure if he's
Not that I would ever have played that game. So yeah, pressing forward because we're not going to talk about that. So yeah, if y'all have any thoughts or suggestions about this podcast, please let us know. Let us know in comments on SoundCloud, the Twitters, our Twitch channels, like mine and Mo's, Lakes' Twitch channels, our Discord, where you can find all of that stuff on gbrunners.com/TIGB. So that kind of just ties into where they can find us. So just a quick plug: you can find me on Twitch and Twitter at Belthic Gaming. My YouTube still don't have enough subscribers because I haven't uploaded to it in like 5 months. So that will eventually be Belthic, but until then, it's just some weird ID that you have to click in my profile to get to. Where can I find you, Mo?
You can find me on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube, all/Moelle, which is MOELLEUH. Because, yeah, like I said before, I can't get it without the UH.
Then you can find our fantastic producer, who has been generous in helping us get these podcasts up on time. And
Mostly, yeah.
At SprintingLegs on Twitch, typically Legs in Discord, and Legs on YouTube. So
Yeah.
again, you can find all that information on gbrunners.com/TIGB. We do have a Patreon, I believe at $20 goal a month. Mo and I will start doing live streams of the podcast. So instead of hearing our voice, you'll be able to look at our faces as well. So you get to see me do really dumb things in the background while Mo is talking.
Yeah. Maybe that's the reason why we still haven't reached that goal, because nobody wants to see that. But
Probably why.
yeah. Just if you do want to support us but do not want to see us, just put it in the comment or something. Please do not make live episodes. So then we know. Then we'll just make up a new goal or something.
Yeah. Maybe we'll have someone make a comic version of us instead. Yeah.
Completely animated on the spot live while we're yeah, no, that's never gonna happen.
That would be insane.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna
awesome.
be able to do that for $20.
That'd be awesome, but man, that'd be nuts. Yeah, so on the next episode of This is Game Boy, Mo and I are gonna get toxic.
Ooh. There's gonna be a lot of bling sounds in that one.
There are gonna be a lot of bling sounds in that one. It's not the mole's fault. They're blind. They don't know where they are.